Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man, the same murder three? Strange things that happen here, how stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree?
Welcome to Strange Things. I'm your host, Chris James. Before I get going with Cliff Barackman, I must thank Arturo for coming by Tuesday night and getting the studio back up and running. Cliff Barackman was born and raised in Long Beach, California. Cliff became an elementary school teacher, and he is a jazz guitarist. He appeared in Monster Quest, Legend of the Hairy Beast in 2007. 2010, he accompanied Bob Saget on a trip to Washington where they were filming Strange Days. Cliff can be seen today on the weekly TV show Finding Bigfoot. And thanks for coming on the show.
I'm happy to be here.
Fantastic. We also must say hello to Audrey Cooper, big fan of yours, and the person responsible for the majesticalcryptid.net. I met Cliff in... Is
that a blog? I'm sorry, is that a blog?
Yes.
Or is that a website? What is the Majestical Cryptid?
I think it's a blog, but I don't know what a blog is. To me, it's a website. But
yeah, there's a fine line between blogs and websites nowadays. So.
I don't have either one. I don't know what either one does. I can barely manage my Facebook account.
Okay.
I met Cliff in Jefferson, Texas at the TBRC conference and was thrilled when he showed an interest in coming on Strange Things, and so here he is. What was the one item, or were there several items, that first got you interested in Bigfoot?
Well, when I look back upon my life, I can trace a love of monsters as far back as I can remember. I remember being aware of Sasquatches or Bigfoot or whatever, since I was probably about 5 or 6 years old, or probably even before that. But, I grew up in the 1970s loving In Search Of and all those spectacular or kind of corny and cheesy nowadays documentaries and
it was all we had.
Like, yeah, exactly. And I was a kid and I was ripe for it, right? So at an early age, the love of monsters, whether it was Bigfoot or Godzilla for that matter, or any other, critters, Wolfman, Dracula, all that stuff, I loved it all. And to me at the time, when I was a little boy, Bigfoot was just one of them. And I've always had an interest in the weird and strange and unusual. I'm a weird guy, But it was when I was in college that I stumbled across this book that was a compilation of scholarly articles written about Sasquatches. And that's when I realized that, holy smokes, these things aren't just weird and monsters, but they might be real. And since I was already backpacking and camping and all that stuff anyway, I've done that all my life, I decided to kind of put that on the list of things I do when I'm out in the woods. And I started camping in places specifically to try to encounter a Sasquatch. And that was all the way back in the early 1990s, and here I am 20-something years later, basically hopelessly drowning in the subject, even still.
Yes. Growing up in the West, is it common for folks out there to accept the idea of Bigfoot a little more than, say, anywhere else in the U.S.?
Well, I think it's more common now that Finding Bigfoot has been on the air for so long. I find that one of the good things that has come from Finding Bigfoot is that people are much more willing to speak about their encounters. But really, in the West versus the East, it doesn't really matter so much. It's really a matter of where you are in the country and if Bigfoots live nearby. Because, say, for example, in Los Angeles or Long Beach, California, where I grew up, most people don't think much about Sasquatches, don't really know or care, assume it's just nonsense, like so many other things are. But you go up to the Olympic Peninsula, Lake Quinault or something like that in Washington, and you start asking around, and they may or may not believe, but they know somebody who says they've seen one or heard one or something. So it's kind of where you are. And you're in the woods of West Virginia, they know they're there. It's not a surprise. They always have been there. You go to the desert regions, and they don't think much about it. So again, you talk to the people who live near these things, and they're much more open to it because the stories have probably crossed their desk at one point or another.
Mm-hmm. Did you meet James Fay before the Monster Quest episode?
Yeah. I met Bobo probably in 2004, 2005. I met him in Northern California in the Redwoods. Actually, that's the same time I met Moneymaker as well. We all met on a Bigfoot expedition up to the Redwood area. And it turns out, I don't remember what month that was, but it was like spring, like maybe May or April or something. I don't really remember. But, I was an elementary school teacher at the time, so I was looking at having a few months off, late June to August, of course. And Bobo was a commercial fisherman, and that's a very seasonal job as well, because, there's only certain seasons you're allowed to fish. And so I told Bobo, I'm going to go to Bluff or whatever in a couple weeks, or I'll give you a call when I'm up here. And so I met up with Bobo, and we started hanging out. And Bobo was stoked because Bobo, for as long as he's been alive, has been a rabid Bigfooter, and it's hard to find somebody who has the same desire and pull to a subject. So when Bobo and I met, it was like two kindred spirits coming together. Like there's nothing either one of us would rather do. So we started spending a tremendous amount of time together in the woods. Bobo knows Bluff Creek better than anybody, really, I would say. So he showed me around some of the spots he was exploring. And when he couldn't be out there, I was out there alone because I would go, Bigfooting. I still do this. I go Bigfooting alone mostly. So I would show Bobo some of the spots that I was working, where I was getting some activity. And, and I guess a friendship was born, really. And Bobo's been one of my best buds for a long, long time. In fact, I literally spoke to him today just because we haven't talked in a few weeks. So we hung out for about 45 minutes and caught up with each other on the phone. And, he'll be up here in a couple of weeks, I guess, to hang out a little bit.
That is an interesting combination. You a school teacher, Bobo a fisherman, and Moneymaker is a lawyer?
No. He's not a lawyer. He chose not to take the bar, as the story goes. He does have a Juris Doctorate in law. He went to law school out in Akron, Ohio. And I don't know exactly why he chose not to take the bar or whatever. There's lots of theories about it. Matt says that he just, his family's full of lawyers. His dad is a lawyer, a precedent-setting lawyer, actually. He's very famous in the lawyer world. I want to say his sister or brother or something is a lawyer, too. I don't know. Matt comes from a big family of lawyers, and I think he just decided that wasn't for him. And I guess if you're not going to be a lawyer, the next logical thing to do is look for Bigfoot for a living.
Well, it's a unique combination, the three of y'all.
Yeah, I would say so. We're a bunch of strong-headed, stubborn folks out there with a common cause. It's a miracle we get along as well as we do. And we do get along. We all like each other. We're all friends. We drive each other crazy, I'm sure. I'm sure I'd drive them crazy too, but it's a fun combination to be out in the woods with those guys.
Well, you've got to have the proper sense of humor, or something like that would drive a person nuts.
Well, if you're not laughing with us, I guarantee we're laughing at you.
Mm-hmm. Was it odd or thrilling when somebody saw you out in public and recognized you from the show?
Both. I would say that, it's a little bit of an ego feed, I guess, especially when, it's new and that sort of thing. It's nice when they recognize me for the right reasons, I'll say. Just the fact that I'm on TV isn't a good enough reason for me, although I understand that's the doorway. I appreciate it when people, they might approach me and say, "Oh, you're Cliff, that guy in the show. I read your blog. I really like that article you wrote about Sasquatches clapping instead of knocking." Or I like your thoughts on eye shine, or something like that, to show that they've gone a little bit deeper instead of, "Oh, you're that one guy. Your name's Moneymaker." I go, "No, that's the villain. That's the other guy." No.
How about the kids from your school? Were you still teaching when the show first came out?
Yeah, I was still teaching at the time. I had to take a little bit of time off to film the first season, about 6 or 7 weeks, if I remember correctly. The pilot was filmed during the summer, I think a week after I was done with the school year. But the season one, I had to take some time off, and I really do appreciate not only the administrator but the parents and the families and the students for being understanding with me about that. So they've given me nothing but support about the whole thing, because, like if you're a teacher, you're in the classroom with these kids 6-7 hours a day. They become your family. Then you become part of their family. The surrogate parent that you hang out with, and that sort of thing. So of course they want the best for me, just like I want the best for them. It was difficult, of course, making sub plans and all that sort of stuff. And it was a difficult time in general, actually, just because I'm being pulled in two different directions so strongly. But I couldn't have done it without the support of the school community, certainly. Yeah, I owe them everything.
In Jefferson, you talked about the footprints and how to hopefully not differentiate from a fraud to a real one, but to at least get an inkling as to how true the footprints are. Could you kind of go over that a bit for the audience?
Footprints, if you're looking at a human-shaped footprint in the ground that's large, too large to be a human, that's basically real or fake. There's no other way around it. I guess it could be a really, really big human, although that kind of falls short too, because even like Shaquille O'Neal, for example, if I remember correctly, his footprints are about 14 and a half inches long, the same length as the Patterson-Gimlin film subject. But the Patty's feet are about 1/3 wider than Shaq's. So there are some telltale features that one looks for to try to discern whether or not they're real Sasquatch footprints or hoaxes. In fact, I'm trying to write a book on this, but I'm finding writing a book is harder than I expected, because I'm a pretty good writer, but it's the focus that I seem to lack, apparently. It's the ADHD in me coming out. But there's so many things to look for and look at in a footprint to discern whether it's real or fake. Length versus width proportions is high on the list. The deepest part of the footprints in the push-off, that's a big one, because humans push off on the front part of the balls of their feet, on the heads of the metatarsals. That's the metatarsals are the bones, and the heads are the front part of the bones at this point. Where Sasquatches push off at the base of the metatarsals, leaving different signatures in the ground. You can look at the way that the soil is disturbed, and figure some things out about how the track maker was walking. For example, I did really extensive studies on the way like fake stompers, like wooden feet cutouts, what kind of signatures they leave. Because I was the object of a couple hoaxes, the London tracks, for example. I wasn't specifically the target for that one, and I went out and did my due diligence. I cast 72 prints out of the 102 or 122 that were there. And then I immediately went back on the road for Finding Bigfoot. So I didn't really get around to getting deep with them. But after maybe 6 or 8 months of staring at these things, I finally came to the conclusion that they're most likely hoaxed. And, of course, during that time, another fake trackway surfaced as well, the LB tracks. And I thought those were hoaxed when I first got there, but I was convinced to keep my mind open by a couple other Bigfoot investigators, Bigfoot researchers, who said, no, these are real, these are real. I said, I don't think so, look at this. And of course, we later found out those were hoaxed as well. So my initial observation, or my initial feeling was right about those, which, is kind of rewarding in a way to think about. But the dynamic signatures of a living, malleable Sasquatch foot leave very distinct markers that are different than either a wooden stomper or a human foot. And mostly it's where the pressure's put at various points in the stepping process. And then there's other things too, like, toe splay, for example, that sort of thing. But people, if you're not really deep into it, people say, okay, mid-tarsal break, okay, the tightrope walking sort of thing, that settles it. No, there's so much more than that. And it really takes a long time and a large data set, honestly, to get to know Sasquatch footprints well. Anybody who wants to be a so-called expert, which I don't even consider myself, but I don't consider myself an expert on Sasquatch footprints. I don't even consider myself an expert on Bigfoots. I consider myself a learner, like everybody else. But if, you want to be an authority, I guess, on these things, you should start collecting as many casts as possible and start looking at these things really deep and spending some time with them. There are some things that cannot be hoaxed in them, and you only learn that I've spoken to Jeff or to Dr. Meldrum about this quite a bit, actually. I've spoken to him that like the only way you can really see the qualities that are there is by being familiar with a lot of casts. There's really no other way to do it. You can't measure this stuff. Because you think, oh, measurements, that's empirical, right? You can't, there's no subjectivity about that. That's your perception, my perception, because it's all measurements, it's all numbers. But you can't even do that, because, like, where do you start measuring? I don't know, I'm kind of, like, going off topic now. But if you want to be a Sasquatch track guy, you got to get a lot of casts in your collection to start understanding what they look like and how one individual foot can leave a variety of footprints, and start looking at what do they have in common, what do they have that's different, and how can I tell a difference between a real one and a fake one. That's a very long, rambling answer for you. I apologize, but that's what you get. So
a lot of folks don't take into consideration that your foot and Bigfoot's foot is going to be flexible. It's going to move. So every single footprint is not going to be identical.
No. In fact, none really should be. They should maybe look similar, but they should not be identical. And it's that the similarity is the fact that some of these things are virtually identical from step to step. That is a strong indicator of a hoax.
Also, what was it you said about the footprint is not the shape of the foot?
Yeah, that's one of my mantras, is the footprint is not the shape of the foot. It's the shape of the damage done to the ground by the foot as the track maker walks by. And what that really comes down to is that it's not a stamp, like a pop, and that footprint has been made. That foot comes down, pop, there's the impression. What it is the foot comes down, the heel touches, the weight shifts on the leading foot, the heel impresses deeper. As the weight is taken off the back foot, the trailing foot, more weight is put on the front foot. And where is that weight going? On a human, it's going on the lateral, the outside of the foot. The lateral side of the foot kind of curves around, and then the ball is there. And where does the weight push down on the ball on a human foot? On the heads of the metatarsals, and then you have the weight going on the toes. So the toes and the heads of the metatarsals will be deeper than the middle part of the foot. Oh, that's in a human foot. In a Sasquatch foot, they can come down flat-footed, they can come down heel first. That's kind of up for debate, and it's also probably individually determined. There are a lot of Sasquatch reports where a Sasquatch runs across cement, and it sounds like it's pop, 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 like slapping a hand against the cement. That makes me think they might be a little bit more flat-footed than we are in some ways. But when they put the pressure on, like they lift an entire leg off the ground. Like the entire weight of the animal is put upon one of their legs for a full, I think, 20 or 30% of their stride, if I remember right. I'd have to go back and check that. But that leaves a totally different footprint than a human. And of course, when they push off, because they have flexibility in the mid part of their foot, they push off their weight on the entire ball of their foot, not just the leading heads of the metatarsals, the entire ball of the foot. And that pushes that whole section down and pushes the mid-tarsal pressure ridge behind it, or the mid-tarsal pressure disc, depending on the substrate, the plasticity and water content and stuff of the substrate itself. And that leaves an entirely different footprint. But after saying all that, I'm going to say usually, because every footprint is different. I have footprint casts in my collection that are 100% authentic that show a slightly different twist to the whole theme. You know, it's a variation on a theme, to use a musical term. And again, that's the beauty and the fascination for me in this whole thing is the variety of footprints that can be left by one critter.
Yeah, that's, like I said, that's something a lot of the hoaxers fail to realize when they slap on those wooden feet. And also, then
what's funny, too, is... Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to mention the mid-tarsal break, but go ahead with your comment.
Oh, what I was going to say is that when it started dawning upon me that the London tracks might be hoaxed, because they had me, they fooled me, and I'm not so proud I can't admit that, because I'm foolable, of course. I'm not impervious to liars and hoaxers, and psychopaths and whoever else might want to, fake things, and and there's got to be something psychologically up with these people. I don't know what it is. I guess pranksters and stuff is the more lighthearted side of it, but I think there's some sort of psychopathy involved as well. But I don't know. That's a whole different subject, a whole different thing. But when I started realizing that the London tracks might be faked, what I did is I mentioned the LB tracks earlier. We knew who was involved with the LB tracks. This guy on the Bigfoot forums, this skeptic guy, and he's always out there poo-pooing Bigfoot stuff. And I met him. He's a nice guy. Don't get me wrong. I like the guy. But, I think he went about things the wrong way. But I called him up, basically, and I said, hey, I want to do some experiments with fake tracks. You don't happen to know anybody with fake footprints that I could borrow for a few months, do you? And he goes, oh, my gosh, I would love to make you a pair. I've always wanted to. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, go for it. And that's actually how I found out he didn't make the tracks. He just called them in for a friend of his. And he invited him to my home and stuff. And I was trying to show him, like, hey, look at this. You can't fake this. And I don't think I think that my explanations fell on deaf ears in some ways. But I asked him, so if you didn't fake them, who did? And he goes, I'm not going to tell you, Cliff. I go, well, okay, that's fair enough, but why won't you tell me? He goes, well, when my name got released, I had death threats.
Yikes.
People emailed me and said that they were going to burn my house down with my wife and children inside of it. Why would I expose a friend of mine to that same level of hatred? I said, okay, fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. I get that. Oh, you know what? Now my whole train of thought was derailed. I went off on some tangent. I can't remember what I was even going to say. But basically, I did these experiments with these fake tracks for a few months, and that taught me a whole lot about the fake tracks. But I don't know. I can't find it. I don't know what I was talking about. Sorry about that.
That's fine by me. That's interesting.
Well, and hopefully your listeners, too, because we're just hanging out talking on the phone, and this is what it's kind of like talking to Cliff. Is I get excited about something and go off in some direction, and I get sidetracked and forgetful. People
that haven't heard you speak in public, they don't know what they're missing, because it is always entertaining and educational.
Well, that comes from my elementary school teaching background, because I know if I'm not having fun, my audience isn't having fun. And when you have 30 10-year-olds for 185 days a year, your butt's on the line, man. You've got to make it fun, or you're dead. You're just dead meat.
A lot of folks don't think about handprints. Would you give the listeners a few pointers about Bigfoot's hand and how they differ from ours?
Well, Bigfoot handprints have been largely overlooked, I feel, and they're super informative. Just another data point that they are consistent with one another, but yet totally different than the humans. Now, the earliest handprint I'm aware of is like the early 60s. Is in is in Fort Bragg, California. A big muddy handprint on the side of a house, if I remember correctly. And since then, there's been probably a dozen or 15 or 18 or more handprints that have been collected and documented in some way or another. Maybe as many as 2 dozen. I'm not really sure if you count photographs and stuff. And by and large, the ones that we think are legitimate are consistent with one another. And generally speaking, the hands, from the wrist to the fingertips are a little shorter, not quite as long as in humans. They're wider than they are proportionally. I mean, yeah, sure, a Sasquatch handprint can be 10 or 12 inches from the wrist to the tip of the middle finger, but it's very, very wide, much wider than in humans. So the proportions are way off. Their fingers appear much shorter in proportion than humans, but that's probably because the webbing, the skin in between the phalanges, the finger bones, go up higher on the fingers than they do in humans. But the real clincher is the thumb. The thumb is not positioned as it is in human beings. Now I'm looking at my hand right now. I'm looking at the palm of my hand, my right hand, and my right thumb is sticking out to the right, because I'm looking at the palm, right? And if I were just to close that palm all the way across, it would eventually touch my pinky finger, or at least the base of my pinky finger, right? And but in Sasquatches, that's not the case. If you rotate the thumb so it kind of, the fat pad on the end of the thumb is facing the same direction as the palm of your hand while it's fully extended, that's the position that the Sasquatch thumb is in, more or less. Now, they can move the thumb, in that arc. They can put it parallel to the index finger, or they can stick it way out. But the fat pad of their thumb would always be facing the same direction as the palm of the hand. And so what that means is that they lack the dexterity, the fine motor skill dexterity that human beings have for manipulating things like twine or small pebbles or BBs or something like that. And also, they don't grab things in quite the same way. There's a number of excellent eyewitness Sasquatch reports that indicate that when a Sasquatch grabs a tree or a stick or a fern stalk or something like that, all 5 of its digits wrap around that thing in the same direction, as opposed to 4 fingers and a thumb on the other side like humans would do. So that's kind of a Bigfoot hand 101 crash course. Their thumb's very different. The proportion of their hands are very different. They have all the same bones. And really, the neat thing about hands, well, there's a lot of neat things about hands, but one of the neat things about hands for me is hands give us insight into what they do and how they do it. Like our hand has what's called a precision grip, like I said, for manipulating small things like thread or whatever. Theirs is not. It's a power grip. Their hands are built for power, not precision. And when you think about how they must be living out in the woods, that makes a lot of sense.
Yes, it does. Have you ever been on a Bigfoot hunt only to stumble on something that you wish you hadn't stumbled upon?
Okay. The first thing that comes to my mind is when we were in Nepal shooting Finding Bigfoot. A little bit of a backstory here. Each episode, one of us gets to do the quote-unquote solo camping. I admit it's not solo, because if it was solo, who's filming it? If it was truly solo, you wouldn't get to see it. But the solo camping segment of Finding Bigfoot is the best opportunity for us, in my opinion, because when, like, say it's my turn to go solo camping, it's me and a camera guy, Tyler Bounds or Carter, or whoever, whatever producer camera guy is there. It's me and one person. And that's the smallest group we could ever have on Finding Bigfoot. Otherwise, you wouldn't have a show, right? I mean, if it's just me, I'm not filming myself. It's a Les Stroud thing. He can do that. So in Nepal, Bobo got to do the solo camping. And he was being filmed by one of our producers named Chad. So Chad and Bobo were out at this lake. And in the mountains of in the Himalayan mountains of Nepal, it's like the Wild West, but wilder in some ways. There are literally no roads. You cannot drive there because there are no roads. You can walk there if you've got the 8 or 10 days it takes to get up there. You can walk there, and that's how most of the Sherpas get around. Sherpa isn't a job; it's actually an ethnic group. So the Sherpas get around by walking. And they walk. We had to send our stuff with them, actually, on these ox sort of things, these yak things, and they huge bundles of stuff. Like they're amazing people walking. I don't even know how far. 28 miles in a day and a half in flip flops. But anyway, up there in the mountains, the jurisdictions, I should say. What's the word? Escapes me. But anyway, like each area is governed by the local monastery, by the local Buddhist monastery. And each little township and city, and you can't even call them cities, or like these little villages out there in the towns, they're ruled by the Buddhist monastery that's nearby. So Bobo and Chad went to this lake, and they were going to camp there at the lake because the locals told us that Yetis go there, right? So Bobo and Chad are out there, and these guys come by in the middle of the day. They walk by while Bobo and Chad are out there doing Yeti stuff. And they say, you shouldn't be here. And they say, well, we're here with permission from the monastery and whatever. I say, I don't know about you. And they leave. And then that night, this torrential downpour comes. It's crazy, heavy, insane rain. And the next day, those same people who were like casting shadows and casting shade on Bobo and Chad came back. and they were furious. They accused Bobo and Chad of upsetting the gods who caused the rain, who caused a landslide, who caused their trail to be washed out, making them unable to return to their villages, right? And so basically Bobo was elevated to demigod status by these people because Bobo apparently caused the flood.
Oh,
and Bobo loves that. I'm sorry, what?
He is a big guy.
He's a big guy, but he's no demigod, right? And he certainly, I mean, don't tell Bobo I said this, but he doesn't have the power to cause rain. You know, he may disagree with me on that. But so anyway, he caused that flood apparently, according to these people, and the gods were mad and whatever else. And so they got a big argument, almost a fight with these people. Now we met Bobo there later in the day to film, and these people were still there, and they did not want us to film there. Which is getting back to your question, I might add. They did not want us to film there, and they were making a big stink about it. Now we had people of high authority with us, and we had monks with us, and all this sort of stuff. So they said that they would allow us to film for whatever we needed to do, and then we had to leave. And so they allowed us to film while they were there lurking nearby, giving us a stink eye and stuff. But as soon as we were done filming the one segment they said they would allow us, they became just frankly, just a-holes. They were just jerks to us, to the point where they pulled out their homemade guns. Now, and I think there's a name for it. My dad was a cop. He told me there's a name for these things. But basically straws with bullets in it that you bang on the back with a rubber band. I don't know what the names are. But they pulled out their homemade guns and threatened to shoot us if we didn't leave. So clearly we left, right? We just went Yetiing up the road a bit or whatever. But while we were leaving the area, they were shooting bullets off into the darkness, into the night, to try to scare us away. So I kind of wish I didn't run across that while I was Bigfooting. Running across angry, superstitious people in roadless areas shooting homemade guns at us in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
That's not cool.
It's called a zip gun.
A zip gun. There you go.
Yeah, that's
exactly what it's called. You're right.
It's dangerous at both ends. It's just as likely to kill the shooter as the shootee.
Well, at least they were fair to us in that way.
If you can consider it that way. Well, y'all have,
we're all just people. I'm a loving guy. So.
You've been to Nepal. You've been to China. I've seen Australia. How about Russia? Is there something going on that Russia is not on the schedule?
We considered going to Russia briefly, but it turns out one of our supervising producers had filmed there before and had such a negative experience with the corruption and crime and just the political dysfunction there, that he said if we go there, he's not coming. And then several of his co-producers decided he's right, we shouldn't do this. And this guy told us a story where he shot in Moscow. Could be wrong, but a big Leningrad or Moscow or somewhere, like a big city. And when they, when you film anywhere, whether it's in the country or out of the country, you need permits, right? Mm-hmm. And when it's out of the country, a lot of those permits are like federal permits or, quote unquote bribes, and it's just what's done. It's just how things work. And so they did all their permits. They got all the necessary this and that and paid the money and got the paperwork done. And they left the hotel in the morning. And I guess the hotel guy was in cahoots with the local Fed guys. And so they called the local Fed guys and said, yeah, they're leaving. And then less than 10 minutes later, they were confronted. Like the film crew, the American film crew was confronted by the Russian cops saying, we need to see your permits. And, of course, being all legal, because the film crews are like that. They cross their T's and dot their I's. They said, yeah, here's our permits. We're allowed to do this. I say, well, I can see you got the tripod right there. Do you have a permit for the tripod? And they go, well, we don't need a permit for the tripod. He says, yeah, you do. I said, well, who says? I say, because this is my, jurisdiction and whatever else. I'm the Russian police officer, blah, blah, blah. Where's the permit for the tripod? I said, well, we don't have a permit for the tripod. And we talked to so-and-so. They said, blah, blah, blah. No, too bad. Okay, so we're going to confiscate all your equipment, those tripods, those cameras, and or you can give us a $10,000 fine right now, which is, fine-bribe.
Mm-hmm.
And now, mind you, each camera on set, these are these aren't the giant cameras you shoot movies with. These are the ones you shoot reality TV with. They're not top of the line, but they're darn good cameras.
Mm-hmm.
They cost $60,000 a piece.
Yikes!
It's $30,000 for the lens and $30,000 for the camera housing. And the Russian cops wanted to confiscate all of them or get a $10,000 bribe. So anyway, it was those kinds of experiences from the people who actually had to experience those experiences that stopped us from going to Russia.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah, it seems reasonable.
Not the kind of place I'd want to deal business, especially if you have to pay a fine every time you leave the building.
Yeah. Well, it's a shady place, man. I mean, you think our government's shady. When you cross it with theirs, it's insane.
Yes.
It's good just to stay out of all that, don't notice me. I'm just living in the woods, man.
You just got married before the Jefferson Conference. How does your wife feel about your advocation?
Oh, well, she loves it. I mean, she loves me, and and I love her, so it's fair. But I met her on Finding Bigfoot. She was actually part of the production team on Finding Bigfoot, and we kind of hit it off. And obviously, we kind of hit it off. It's an understatement. We hit it off well, and we'd sneak away and hold hands and have coffee and stuff. We kept it totally on the down low and professional and stuff. But you can't help it when you're falling in love with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And then after the season where she worked with us, she decided not to come back because of professionalism and whatnot. But we kept the relationship going, and here we are a couple years later, and we decided to get married. And she's upstairs right now. Actually, I convinced her to move out from Pittsburgh to the cold, clammy climate of the western slopes of Mount Hood, Oregon.
Right.
But yeah, she's very, very forgiving of me. And really, that's one of the major things I've always looked for in a significant other is forgiveness.
Mm.
And also an understanding of my lifestyle. That's very often got in the way in the past. And that's not saying anything bad about any of the women I've dated before. But Melissa, my wife, is so forgiving of my need for solitude. So if I went upstairs right now and said, I just got a report up by government camp and somebody saw a Sasquatch 30 minutes ago, I need to go. She would say, okay, cool. When are you coming back?
Mm.
And I would say, I'm going to be up there for 3 days. She goes, all right, cool. I'll see you.
Dang.
And that's it. She's so forgiving and so understanding of who I am and what I am and my love and my passion. Mm. And part of that is because, of course, I met her on Finding Bigfoot, which is a wonderful foundation for a relationship for me. But also, I think that's what I personally, and I don't want to offend anybody, but that's what spouses should do. In my opinion, spouses should encourage their other to chase their dreams, to do whatever it is they feel they need to do. Melissa and I have a thing. We always say, be yourself as loud as you possibly can. And we live by that. Whatever she wants to do, absolutely. I trust her 110%. Whatever I want to do, she trusts me 110%. I can disappear for 2 weeks. So can she. If whatever she's up to, I don't know what would bring her away for 2 weeks. But if there was something going on in, Western Washington that I needed to go check out and spend some time at, she would totally let me. It's no big deal at all. So, she's very, very forgiving, and I just can't say enough good things about her. I mean, obviously, I married her.
Yes. Does she go on any of the expeditions with you now that she's not on the film crew?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, mostly because she likes to camp, which is great. She's not insane about it like I am. I'll go out during the winter. She won't. She likes comfort a little bit more than that. But she's interested in the Bigfoot thing. I mean, really, ghosts and UFOs, that interests her more, which is great because I don't really care. I mean, I think that stuff's interesting, but I don't have time for that. I mean, Bigfoot takes my life. I don't have time for any of the other weird stuff. But since she's into her weird stuff, she lets me be into my weird stuff. And she's been camping with me a number of times, and she's heard Bigfoots now, which is cool. She's heard them coming in knocking at the Blueberry Bog, which is one of my favorite spots. Now I can't wait to show her more stuff. Like, I can't wait to show her Will Call Hill. We haven't been there yet, and that's one of my other good spots in Mountain Hood here. She's interested in it. And now that we live in the woods, I heard a Bigfoot from my own property, actually. I just moved out to the western slopes of Mount Hood just a few months ago. I finally got out of the city after all this time. And I heard a Bigfoot from my property, and I'm super stoked on it, I would have never thought I would be able to say that in public, or especially. But I'm so confident. Like, Tom Powell was there, Mike Leone was there, both very competent Bigfooters. Tom's a little weird. I don't agree with him about all the Bigfoot stuff, but he's a competent Bigfooter. And both those guys heard it with me. Like, I heard a Bigfoot from my property, and she's super stoked that, like, they might be around. So I guess the long and short of it is that I get nothing but support from my wife. Fantastic. And I couldn't be more thankful. I chose correctly. And again, no offense to anybody else I may have ever dated, but like, I just got lucky that Melissa likes me back.
When you're out doing a camp out for the film, for the show Finding Bigfoot, do you find the film crew is a bit of a distraction, or are they more of a support?
I find them to be more of a support. I can't say that might be true for all the cast members, but I like them around. Because they're so supportive and kind, and they're 100% into making a good TV show that's compelling for everybody and not faking anything. Now, I don't want to talk crap about other TV shows and stuff, but we've had camera guys who work for these ghost shows, and we've had camera guys who know this guy on the Bigfoot show or whatever, and all of the people who work on Finding Bigfoot, from the sound guys to the camera guys to the producers, they all say Finding Bigfoot is the most real reality show they've ever worked on. Ever. Now, that's significant. And, okay, television is a shallow, superficial medium. You don't get the whole story. You just get, like, the top of the story, the takeaways, the sound bites, all that stuff. But when everybody whose job it is to work in television walks away saying, this show is the most real reality show we've ever worked on, and they all have a half dozen or a dozen under their belts, that's something, to me at least, to be kind of proud of. Like, we've done the best job we could with a medium that doesn't really, that really doesn't lend itself to authenticity in a lot of ways. And frankly, so many of those other Bigfoot shows are set up because they have to have that act break. That's what they call it, the thing right before the commercial. Well, we were telling them from the very beginning, like, they want to wait. I remember one of the producers on the pilot, that stick's broken. They yelled this at Bobo. That stick's broken. Just say a Bigfoot stepped on it. And we're saying, no. But we showed them, I feel at least, that we showed them that you can make compelling, real television and not lie. Because you know what? Finding Bigfoot is a blip in my life. It's a great blip. It gives me amazing opportunities and great friends and my wife, and I can just go down the list. These beautiful blessings that were bestowed upon me because of Finding Bigfoot. But the fact is, I was Bigfooting 20 years before Finding Bigfoot showed up, and I don't plan on stopping. The only thing that's stopping me is the pine box they put me in at the end of the run, And that 7-year run isn't, like, I'm not going to lie for that 7-year run. Because in Bigfoot land, where we all live, if you get caught in a hoax, well, that's it, right? Like, no one's going to believe anything you do after that. So it's the fact that Matt, Bobo, and I, and Renee too, she doesn't think they're real, but I don't want to give her the, I don't want to talk bad about Renee, but like, because she didn't lie either. Well, she didn't lie either. But the fact that we could go into this medium and make a pretty good show, I think, and keep it real, that's special. And to me, at least, that's kind of an accomplishment, because you're battling a lot of heavy tides there, you know? Because TV is nonsense. That's why I don't watch other TV shows, because I know what the producers are saying behind the screen. I know that they're saying, well, we need something a little bit more. Can you give a little bit more?
Gotta have
but we didn't have to do that. And I'm very, very lucky because of that. But also part of that is because Matt Bobo and I are stubborn, pig-headed jerks, and we absolutely refuse to do it. At one point, they had to fly the network executives out from New York to talk us down because we were flipping out so hard. And you know, if they could make 2 or 3 more television shows about what happened behind the scenes on Finding Bigfoot, they would have far greater ratings than Finding Bigfoot ever had.
I've caught a few of the episodes, and it's like I kind of prefer the behind-the-scenes episodes to the actual out in the woods, just because you learn a lot more about what's going on.
You know what? I do too, but because I like seeing my friends on camera, and like the Mary, the story producer, or Andy, we call him Grandpa, the sound guy. I like seeing those people on camera, because they're the unsung heroes of Finding Bigfoot. And also, they're the people who don't give a crap. And that's what I love about them. Like Andy, for example, I call him Grandpa. We all call him Grandpa. He came into this thinking Bigfoot, nonsense, total BS. But after 3 or 4 years with this, he walks away saying, oh my God, they might be real. You know, like, he doesn't believe most of the witnesses we talk to, but he's had experiences. He's heard the howls. He's heard the yells. He's heard the knocks coming back after we do it. And after those experiences, even the most diehard skeptic, Renee, even the most diehard skeptic has to say, well, I don't know. Like, even Renee, I feel Renee's become a little bit more stubborn as time's gone on, just so she can hold her position better. But she's the one that sees eye shine every time we go out. She's the one that told me she saw a 7-foot shadow run across the road in Louisiana. She's the one that can't seem to explain these things, but she holds on to her belief. And that's the problem with beliefs, I might add. This is like Cliff rant time, by the way. I'm sorry. I don't know why you're here right now asking me questions. I just do this whole thing. Like the belief problem. People believe things and grab onto their beliefs, whether it's politics or religion or Bigfoot is real or Bigfoot is not real or whatever. It's like these beliefs that we grab onto, but are unswayed by evidence. It's maddening sometimes. And the fact that, like Renee, for example, she's a great person, super kind, loving spirit, everything. But she's seen 7-foot shadows run across the road bipedally. She's seen eye shine. She's had rocks thrown at her out of the darkness where nobody possibly could have been. She's heard the howls. She's heard the answer knocks. She's heard all this stuff. But Bigfoots aren't real. Belief is a hindrance. I would suggest to all of the audience to look at evidence instead and be willing to let go of belief when things aren't going that way.
That's a good point. I agree with you on all of it, really. All I can say about Renee as far as her skepticism, that's a Hollywood formula. The people that make the movies, the guys that make the TVs, they say, okay, we've got to have somebody that believes in it, and then we're going to have somebody that doesn't believe in it because they want balance. And
yeah, that's part of the formula for sure. And she played her role very, very well. And it's not to say that she's like faking it or anything. No. I don't mean that by played her role, but that's why she was there. And I'll be darned if she didn't do it. And I feel for her because I'm not an easy. I mean, you see me on TV and I'm all smiles and everything, but I'm not an easy person. Like, because I'm stubborn and I don't mind kind of like saying a fancy sentence that has a middle finger buried in the middle of it, like I don't mind doing that sort of stuff because I prey on the ignorant, in some ways. And again, Renee's not ignorant. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm just saying that I pity her for having to deal with me, let alone Bobo and Matt. Because I'm kind and polite for the most part. But I can't say that for my brethren, you know.
I notice y'all do pick on each other quite a bit, so that's why I always figure you must have a really good sense of humor. Otherwise, there'd been a fist fight already.
Well, yeah. Again, the stories I could tell. But, you know, we're stuck with each other, like it or not, for, you know, like, we're on the road 7 or 8 months a year together. Whoa. 7 or 8 months a year. And we didn't, you don't get to choose your family, and you don't get to choose who you work with. You find a way to make it work. Oddly enough, you know, let's see, oddly enough, like Matt and Renee get along really well. It doesn't seem like that on camera.
No.
You think they'd be just like scratching each other and stuff, but like they get along really well. Bobo and I have disagreements, you know, but clearly we get along great on camera and stuff. The dynamic between the cast is really interesting. Luckily, I'm a quiet, introverted homebody by nature, so I can kind of just sit in the back seat and be quiet and not get involved in anything. But if some of the recordings of, you know, when we're off camera could be released, the audience would love us or hate us or both, or I don't know. It'd be crazy.
Did y'all ever have any kind of a incident out in the woods where it should have been on the show, but they just cut it for unknown reasons? Or
oh yeah, dozens of them, dozens of situations like that. Some of the best Bigfoot stuff that ever happened was off camera, or didn't, like, the sound wasn't right, or the camera wasn't on us at the time. And sometimes some of the Bigfoot stuff that happened, the camera was down, but we had to reenact it, which is weird too. It feels fake, but that's kind of the compromise that we Bigfooters make. Is that, like, if it was real and the camera was down at the time, we are happy to reenact that. And that happened less than a half dozen times, I think. Now, we did like 100 episodes. In fact, I think that the last stuff that's going to be aired is our 100th episode celebration. So I think it's right at 100 episodes. But, let's see. What can I think of that? Well, stuff that happened right after shooting is sometimes more interesting. Like in the, I think it was our second visit to Ohio. I don't know if we went 3 times. If we did go 3 times, it might have been our third. But we went to Mohican State Park, and we got a tip that these people run into Bigfoots at this one spot. And Bigfoots are interesting because they go to the same spots again and again, whether it was like last year or 70 years ago. If you go to a spot where a Bigfoot was seen, you have automatically a higher chance of running into a Bigfoot. And it's something called the halibut effect. I coined the name. Matt Moneymaker published it first, but I mean, I coined the name, which is kind of cool that Matt gave me credit for that. Because I grew up in Southern California, and I was a fisherman. So I would go fishing on the jetties and on the boats and stuff like that, and saltwater fishing, you know. So I would go to the spot on the jetty, and I noticed that I would go fishing at the spot, and I'd catch like 5 or 7 halibut, and, you know, and throw them back and stuff like that. And then suddenly the bite would turn off, and I would fish for the next 2 hours and get nothing. But if I went back there a week later, I would start catching halibut again. And I kind of compared that to Bigfoots in a way, because if you go to the spot where a Bigfoot was seen, very often, well, not very often, but, you know, a decent percentage of the time, a Bigfoot's there. And it's because the habitat is good for halibuts or Bigfoots, depending on what you're going after. And if nothing has significantly changed, like pavement, like they paved the area, Bigfoots might still be there. And that seems to be true. So it's called the halibut effect. Oh, shoot. There it is again. I lost my train of thought. What was I talking about?
Well,
help me out here.
You go to a particular location where there have been sightings, and you have a better chance of seeing something than if you're just walking out in the woods. Yeah.
Well, that is absolutely true. And I forgot what I was going somewhere else after that. See, that's the problem with my brain personally, is I get excited about something and I start talking, and I've got 2 or 3 layers of things I want to get through before I get to the point. So I apologize about that. Sorry about that.
That's why I use notes. Otherwise, I would completely...
Yeah, I don't. But you know what? I don't mind, because some of the audience right now is saying, oh, Cliff, unprofessional, blah, blah, blah. But, this is me. And I don't like the celebrity thing. I like me. I have some problems with me, obviously. We all do. But I'd rather be real with y'all than not.
The people that I have dealt with in the Bigfoot community are the ones that pretty much act just like you do. The scientific guys that are all wrapped up in themselves, well, most people don't want to hear from them anyway, it seems. They've all...
Well, that's been one of my strengths, is because I am 100% pro-science. Science doesn't solve all of our problems, but it's a really good process to find out what's real or what's not. And I'm kind of the go-between. I'm the ambassador between science and the public. It's kind of like in the elementary school teaching, which, I taught elementary school for 14 years. I would be an advocate for science and learning and stuff like that. And so I'm a good ambassador from what Dr. Meldrum has to say about footprint morphology to the public, and vice versa. Because sometimes, I love Jeff. Jeff's a friend of mine. I went out in the woods with him this past year, actually, for a little while. When Jeff is doing a lecture at a Bigfoot conference, it's kind of above most people's heads because he doesn't dumb it down. He doesn't say ankle bone. He says, whatever the word is, talus, or whatever the word is for the ankle bone. And I think that is lost on a lot of the people. But luckily, I taught young people, and I can turn that science into something digestible for the general public. And that's not to say that the general public's dumb or can't understand it. They totally can understand it, But it's just a matter of vocabulary and translation. And it turns out that's kind of what I'm good at. And I think that's probably my strength on the show.
Yes. It would be not nearly as entertaining without you on there.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
With all the new high-tech devices, have any of them ever found any decent evidence of Bigfoot, or do some folks just seem to rely too much on technology?
You know what? With the progress in technology, in combination with the dropping in price of that same technology, more and more Bigfoot evidence has been coming in. One of the least expensive pieces of technology that one can have is a sound recorder. And sure enough, a whole lot of people are out there recording the woods at night, which I appreciate. In fact, probably not a week goes by that I don't receive 1 or 2 files via email asking for my opinion on whatever it is that they recorded out in the woods. But also, everybody has a phone in their pocket nowadays. Not everybody's like Derek Randall's or Jeff Meldrum, and it has a flip phone. They're kind of old-fashioned in that way. Most people have an iPhone or a Samsung thing or whatever, and with a camera, boom, a really high-quality camera at their disposal at any moment. And sure enough, more cell phone camera pictures of Bigfoots have been coming in. A young gentleman named Ian Gill got a picture of one in Vermont that I think is legitimate. We investigated that one on our Whitehall episode this past season or 2. Also, game cameras. Once upon a time, the best game cameras were these $600 models, and that's way outside the price range of anybody, I have 1 or 2, but that's because I had a benefactor. I didn't buy them myself. I couldn't afford them. But now that same camera is available in a $78 model. So, and sure enough, I've seen about 7 or 8 game cam photographs of Sasquatches that I think are legitimate, and one of which rivals the Patterson-Gimlin film.
Wow.
And I think is legitimate. So certainly, with the advance of technology and the dropping of the price of technology, more and more big evidence is coming forth. And I think in 20 years, I mean, the species will probably be proven at that point, I think. But in 20 years, there's going to be so much good stuff to look at. I just can't wait. And there's one photograph I'm looking at right now. I got a report from this past, I think it was, I could be wrong, so forgive me for this and many other things I've been saying and doing this past interview. But on the 27th of September, a photograph was taken of a Sasquatch in western Pennsylvania. And I have it. I'm hopefully going to incorporate it into my future presentations and whatnot with the permission of the photograph owner. And again, that was a cell phone. The skipper of the boat saw the thing, took a picture of it. And he couldn't have done that without a cell phone. Mm-hmm. So certainly with the advance of technology and the dropping of prices, more and more data is coming in. Technology is going to be the thing that solves this for us all. I guess ultimately a bullet will, or a car running one of these things over. But in the meantime, technology is going to really put the coffin in the Sasquatch coffin. Wait.
Nail.
The
nail
technology
in the
with a nail in the Sasquatch coffin. I apologize. Yeah.
You mentioned your email address. People are sending evidence to you. You mind giving that out?
No, not at all. You can always email me at NorthAmericanBigfoot@gmail.com, or just go to my website, which is cliffbarackman.com. And on the left-hand side, there's a big button that says Contact Cliff. There you go.
Fantastic. And your website address?
cliffbarackman.com.
All righty. Easy to remember.
Yeah, and if you have a hard time spelling Barackman, just look up Cliff Bigfoot on Google, and you'll find me.
What would you tell folks out there who might be considering becoming a Bigfoot researcher?
Do it. It's a lot of fun. I love it. But don't let things stop you, like friends or relatives saying that this is all nonsense. Don't let the fact that you don't own a thermal imager stop you, because they're very expensive and you don't really need one. I mean, I've had a thermal imager since 2008, and I've only seen a Sasquatch once through one. Don't let anything stop you. Be stubborn. Be pig-headed. Be a real Bigfoot researcher and see what happens. Mm-hmm. Go for it.
And how about books you'd recommend?
And you know what else I would say? I mean, if I may better than myself.
Go.
Don't go it alone. I went alone for a long time. I started in 94 or something like that, 93, 94. And it was in 2000 or 2001 that I finally teamed up with other people. Kathy Strain, Bob Strain, those guys. Mm-hmm. They're really my mentors. I am where I am today because of those people. Don't do it alone. Learn the ropes, be comfortable with what you do, and then find some people who think the same way you do, and then go out to the woods with them as much as you can.
How about books you recommend? Something to bone up on the subject before you get out in the woods.
Well, on my website, you can look at my recommended reading list. In fact, I have a couple recommended reading lists, like for kids, for skeptics, for this and that. But I also have something called required reading. And top of the list is Dr. Jeff Meldrum's book, Sasquatch, When Legend Meets Science, or Legend Meets Science. Also, Dr. Grover Kranz's book. The first printing was called Big Footprints. The second was Bigfoot Sasquatch Evidence. There's also Bindernagel's book. There's so many good books. If you have a thing for the PG film, for the Patterson-Gimlin film, you have to read Bill Munn's book. But basically, go to my website. On the top left corner, it says Cliff's Recommended Reading and Technology List. Go there. I have a list of things that, I even say it on the website. If you haven't read these, I don't take you seriously. Like, that's how important I think reading is, because too many of the new generation of Bigfooters are relying on YouTube.
Yes.
YouTube is fine, but it's just another branch. It's just another tentacle of the octopus of television. And you can't learn what you need to know from there. You can learn some stuff from there. It's not a totally useless, media, but you have to read books.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't, I won't take you seriously. And not that like my opinion is very important of you, but don't you want to be as good a Bigfooter as you can be?
Well, that's the fun thing about going to all these conferences is you get to meet all these other Bigfoot folks, and you can get their books autographed.
Well, yeah, that's part of it. I mean, the whole autograph thing is cool. It's a sycophantic sort of thing, but the networking is the important part.
That too.
That's the important part about conferences. That's the important part about expeditions that you can pay to go on, like whether it's BFRO or the Olympic Project, or I'll be offering these this summer as well. Like, that's the important part. It's not learning from the person throwing the expedition. It's networking from the people you meet there. And that's why I recommend everyone to go to these conferences. Because, yeah, you'll hear a few good speakers, Lyle Blackburn, me, or whoever else is in Meldrum, whoever's out there, But it's the people you meet and you have a beer with, like after the fact. That's where the real networking and the real relationship building is held. And that's where the real value of those circumstances are, where Bigfooters can come together and share ideas and explore other people's ideas. You might meet somebody who lives 20 minutes from you who's been going to the same spot you have for the last 7 years, whereas you've been going there for 3. There's so much information out there buried in these people's brains. Mm-hmm. But Bigfoot is a taboo subject, whether you're the layman who saw one on accident coming home at night one night, or you're the Bigfoot researcher who doesn't talk about it because they don't want to get fired at work. There's so much latent information out there that to be exploited by us and used to our advantage, not in a negative way to somebody else's disadvantage, but to our advantage. And that's why I recommend everyone to go to these conferences, because you meet some people that you like. And at the end of the day, Larry Lund told me this, and a couple of you said, he just said Larry Lund. And that means, Cliff knows what he's talking about. And most of you just said, who the hell is Larry Lund? But Larry Lund told me, Bigfoot is enjoyable because of the people, not the animal.
Speaking of conferences, April 21st, you're going to be appearing in the Huntsville, Texas at the Southeast Texas Bigfoot Conference. Anything you'd like to say about that?
This is the first conference to be held in that area. I think it's going to have a huge turnout. And this is the first, but I predict, I will bet my life on it, this will not be the last. This area of Texas has Bigfoot reports from it, but has never had an organized conference before. Mm-hmm. So I think that a lot of people are going to turn out because they don't want to drive Texas is a really big state, man.
Yes.
Like, people from that area don't really want to drive to Woolheater's Texas, like Texas conference in Jefferson. It's a long ways.
Well, they're lucky. They only have to go a couple hundred miles. I have to go 5.
Yeah, that's the problem about Western states, I guess, is that they're huge. Mm-hmm. So this part of Texas, even though it has reports, has never had a conference before. So I expect a huge turnout with a lot of great information that has never been shared before, and a lot of great Bigfooters whose names are not on the radar. And those are the people you should be paying attention to. Mm-hmm. Yeah, forget the people, forget me, like Cliff Barackman, whatever. My name's on the radar. Forget about me. I've got my own little world here in, outside of Portland, Oregon. Who is the Bigfooter in your area? That's who you should be paying attention to. Mm-hmm. Because I may know 2 or 3 sighting reports from your area, but somebody who's been Bigfooting for 10 or 20 years in your area knows 150 or 200 Bigfoot reports from your area. So that's why you should go to these local conferences. And the Southeast Texas thing is going to be huge, not only because it's the first, not only because it's the best ever been thrown in the area, but because you can meet people who've been Bigfooting in your area longer than you have. And that's what we should all be relying on. We all stand on the shoulders of giants.
Mm-hmm. Any last words you'd like to put out before I let you get back to your dinner?
Well, I guess it's that I don't care if you believe me. I don't want to be disrespectful or anything. I don't care if you believe me. I don't care if you think Bigfoots are real. What I do care about is that you love Bigfoot for whatever you think it is. I think it's a relic hominoid. I think it's something left over from the past that is still eking an existence in our world today. If you think there's some sort of UFO, interdimensional shape-shifting, whatever, I don't care. I just want you to love Bigfoots. If you don't think they're real at all, but you love the pop culture sort of social aspect of it, great. I don't care. As long as you love Bigfoots. Because eventually, a dead Bigfoot will be brought in, and the species will be proven as real. At that time, they're going to need us. Right now, they don't. Right now, they're doing just fine taking care of themselves. But when a dead Bigfoot shows up, whether it's a bullet from some hunter or some logger, rolls one down in his logging truck in the morning on the way to work or something, a dead one will come in because they're real, Mm-hmm. And at that point, they're going to need our help. And if you love Bigfoots now, you're going to love them then too. And because human beings have like maybe a Midas touch, but instead of everything turning to gold, everything we touch turns to crap.
Mm-hmm.
So when they're discovered and we get our paws on them, they're going to need us. They're going to need an army of advocates and weirdos and tinfoil hat wearing whatevers and scientific, primatologists and citizen scientists and you name it. They're going to need us to advocate for them. So right now, spread the word. Spread the word about the Church of Bigfoot. Do what we can to love them. So when their time comes and their gig is up and they are proven to be real animals, they have us as a political force behind them, advocating for their safety, their habitat, and their survival.
Fantastic. This has been Cliff Barackman with me on Strange Things. Back in 1776, someone said, "Give me coffee or give me death." And if that's how you feel, you should be at the Organic Man Coffee Truck. They make coffee the right way, one delicious cup at a time. 4501 McPherson, Suite number 9. Coffee, the stuff dreams are made of.
Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man, the same murder 3? Strange things that happen here, how stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree?